thing I love about camp is that you can do things and explore things that you normally wouldn't at home.
When I think of camp, I think like nature, the frog pond, creek stomping, all the fun activities that we do.
What I like most about camp is the community that is here. It's a safe and open place to ask questions about your faith and to build relationships with people you would never meet.
Camp has impacted me because it's gotten me off my screens and into the wilderness.
One thing I love about Camp Bear Creek is that you get to learn about Jesus and God.
During the school year, both schoolwork and homework and school projects, I tend to find myself drifting away from God. And this week at camp really kind of anchors me back down.
Camp has impacted me because it gives me a lot more confidence to go over to friends' houses, away from my mom and dad, and also really just be independent.
Camp is the light in the darkness. It is always there to pick you up when you're down, and it's just a place where you can be you.
Every new year is a new adventure for you, and you get to do so much stuff.
A word that describes Camp Bear Creek is definitely loving, because whenever I came here, I definitely felt welcome. All the counselors are loving, they're all nice to me.
When I think of camp, I think home.
Hello and welcome back to this week's episode of 25 Live at Home. This week, things are going to be just a little bit different because we're going to hear in our Bible story today something very interesting. Something about being gone fishing. Matthew 4, verses 12 through 23. Now when Jesus heard that John had been arrested, he withdrew to Galilee. He left Nazareth and made his home in Capernaum by the sea, in the territory of Zebulun and Naphtali, so that what had been spoken through by the prophet Isaiah might be fulfilled. Land of Zebulun, land of Naphtali, on the road by the sea across the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles. The people who sat in darkness have seen a great light, and for those who sat in the region and shadow of death, light has dawned. From that time Jesus began to proclaim, "Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is come near." As he walked by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, who was called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fish for people." Immediately they left their nets and followed him. As he went from there, he saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, in the boat with their father Zebedee, mending their nets, and he called them, and immediately they left their boat and their father and followed him. Jesus went through Galilee, teaching in the synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and curing every disease and every sickness among the people. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. So, this story of Jesus calling his disciples to be fishers of men can bring to mind many things. But we know and we can learn that it calls for us to bring people into the love and community of God. Now, one way that I know that we can bring God's joy and love to others is through laughter. We can be a welcoming place where church is a place of community, a place of great joy, a place where people can be themselves and can have a great time. Now, I don't know about you, but fish stories have always been ridiculous, funny, goofy, absurd. And so I've gone out into this wide world of the internet and found just a few of my favorite fishing stories. We're going to read a few of them now. I was once fishing with a guy who was extremely meticulous about his boat. He would always ask you if your shoes were clean before you got on board. Anyway, it was a really hot day, and I started to apply some sunscreen, and he gives me a stern look and tells me not to get any on his carpet. A little while later, he wants to put some on and pulls out this huge, bloated tube of sunscreen. I turn away and cast and hear this loud thump. I turned back. The tube had erupted when he opened it. He and his carpet were covered in the goo. Boy, there was some moaning and gnashing of teeth. I had to bite my tongue before I said something that would end up with me in the lake. Another story. Jim got up bright and early one weekend and headed to the local river. He fished all day long but didn't catch a thing. On the way home, he stopped at the fish market. "I want to buy the 3 biggest steelhead you've got," he said to the owner. The owner started to bag up his order when Jim said, "No need for that, just throw them at me." "Why would I do that?" the owner asked. "So I can tell my wife that I caught 3 fish today." So, the last story is a personal one for me. I'm actually wearing the shirt of the lake that my family's gone up to for 25 years in Perham, Minnesota. And for a long time, one of my uncles, just wouldn't ever go fishing. He didn't understand it, didn't want to wake up early. He just didn't, the whole fish thing weirded him out. It just wasn't for him. But one day, my dad and my other uncle and my grandpa finally convinced him to go out on the boat. So they go out on the boat, and they're out there, and they cast their lines, and they're fishing. And my uncle had just been in the boat. He wasn't going to fish. He wasn't going to drop a line, but he was going to be out there. And he's sitting there with his cup of coffee, and starts to look around, and he's looking at my dad and my other uncle and my grandpa, and he goes, so this is what fishing's all about. Just sitting around, drinking a cup of coffee? I guess I'm pretty good at this. So what can we learn about all of these jokes and stories and fish tales? Well, we can learn that Jesus calls us, much like his disciples, to use our talents to bring people and to be welcoming into this community of Christ. God calls us to be someone who goes out, seeks those who might not be included in other places, right? Fisherman isn't a glamorous job. Even back in biblical days, I'm not sure it made a lot of money. So God calls us to go seek those people who might need more, or those people who traditionally aren't people that are welcome into this larger society. He calls us to look for the lonely, to look for the hungry, to look for the poor. Go and find them. Go and seek them and bring them into my community. Bring them into my net. Go fishing for people, so to speak. So this week, I want you to think about how you and your family will go fishing for people. Now, I'm going to turn it over to a real fishing expert with Sara and Nichole.
Welcome to 25 Live at Home. Today we are here with Mr. Dave Nicholson, who many of you may be familiar with. But I'm going to let him tell you all a little bit about himself and his job at the DNR and a little bit about his time at St. Andrew.
Well, my name is Dave Nicholson. I've recently retired after a 41-year career with the Iowa Department of Natural Resources on the back end of the Coralville Reservoir, which was known as the Hawkeye Wildlife Area. I was a wildlife natural resource technician, so basically my job was to be a farmer for the wildlife. So we would plant food plots, we would plant native grasses, we would plant trees, and then the bigger part of our job was to make sure all public hunting areas in the 5-county area of Johnson, Lynn, Benton, Cedar, Washington, and Benton County were taken care of, and made sure the public could come out there and recreate, as long as their recreation was done in a way that didn't harm the wildlife area. I've been at St. Andrew for approximately, I would say, somewhere between 20 and 25 years. Our kids started coming to the youth groups here, and then we decided we would move from First Presbyterian Church to St. Andrew Presbyterian Church. I've been part of the men's group when we were parking cars for football over on Melrose. It was a wonderful fundraiser for the church. I missed that part of being at Melrose, but St. Andrew's been a great place for us, and we really enjoy it here.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And working at the DNR, how have you learned, or how has that helped you become a better fisherman?
So being with the Wildlife Bureau, we interact with the fisheries guys quite a bit. When they need help on a project, a lot of your public fishing areas are used with Fish and Wildlife funds, but the fisheries guys don't have any way to maintain them. So we would clean off boat ramps and things like that. But just being around the guys and being an outdoor guy my whole life, you just get involved with different types of fishing. And one of the fun things is the kids for the free fishing weekend that Iowa has every year. It's usually the first part of June. and it's Take a Kid Fishing, to introduce somebody else new to the sport of fishing.
Yes, and we forgot to mention Dave's outfit here. He's all dressed up in his fishing gear, which is pretty amazing. I don't know if y'all can see it on the video, but maybe he'll explain a little bit more about it here. But can you also tell us a little bit about the largest fish or the largest number of fish that you've caught in one outing?
Well, a former member of this church by the name of Ernie Lehman got me involved about 18 years ago going up to Canada. My father-in-law bailed out on him on a trip in the fall. And so he came and asked me if I wanted to go. And I said, well, when do you leave? And this was on a Sunday. And he said, well, we leave Friday. Well, at the time we were down to 2 people at work because we had some retirees and stuff like that. And I said, let me ask the other guy. So I asked my coworker, and he said, you should go. So I went, and Ernie found out that I'm a pretty good cook as far as fishing wise. And he said, you're going every year. So when Ernie passed away, now I go up with his kids, and it's just kind of one of those deals where the first time I went, I caught 3 of the biggest walleyes I've ever caught in my life with Ernie. And he was about ready to throw me over the boat because he wasn't catching the fish. But this last spring, the biggest fish I have ever seen, one of his sons had it on, and it was a muskie. And if it wasn't over 50 inches, I'm not 6 foot tall. And he fought it for about 15, 20 minutes, got it up to the boat, and I looked at our net and I said, boys, we're in trouble.
Oh, no.
And so we attempted to net the fish. I got the net underneath the fish. Scott Lehman was the one who had the fish on, and EJ Lehman was in the boat. And EJ grabbed the hoop around the net of the fish, and we tried to lift it up simultaneously. And as we lifted the fish up, the fish flopped into the net head first, just the way you want them to do it. But then it went right through the bottom of the net, put a hole right in the bottom of the net. And we all just sat back and went, wow. And that was something. That was the biggest freshwater fish I've ever seen. Yeah.
That's amazing.
That's very sad, though.
Well,
you didn't even get a picture of it.
That was the key, because you don't keep muskies. You take pictures of them and stuff like that.
Also, is that where the term fishtail comes from?
Well, it could be, but there's 3 people that saw it.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's not just a one-person thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you hear this Bible story about Jesus and making fishers of men, how do you think you might have reacted if you had been there bringing in all those fish in the nets?
What I recall of this story is, they had a hard time getting any food, and then they went out and they threw the net and they caught all these fish. And I've always been under the belief, treat people like you want to be treated. And if you catch something like this and people are hungry and things like that, it kind of goes to what we're doing here at St. Andrew with the food market. And so I would been a joy just to clean the fish, to cook the fish, make sure everybody had the fish. That's why in the state, back in those days, there were no limits on fish. So, you shared what you got. Goes back to like the Indians smoking all the fish and having something to eat in the wintertime. So I've always been on the impression that, okay, let's share our wealth with everybody. One of the things we do now is we have limits on fish, so we don't over harvest the fish, and we can still share the fish that we get.
And that kind of goes back to the give a person a fish, they eat one meal. But if you teach a person to fish,
he has a meal for life.
That's right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So maybe this kind of ties in, but how can our students and families become fishers of men, do you think?
I think that we all just need to treat each other like we would like to be treated ourselves. And if you have a bounty of anything, that you should share that with someone. And hopefully I'll be able to teach some kids how to fish. I'll teach some older adults how to go fishing and stuff like that. It's just to share our beliefs and share our treasures that other people can also enjoy them.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge on fishing and your amazing outfit. It's pretty amazing. Did you want to tell us anything more about that before we go?
This is just kind of the garb we use when we go trout fishing.
Okay.
A guy by the name of Lanny Campy was the one that got us introduced into trout fishing. Dave Dirks, who's also a member here at the church, got me involved.
Okay.
And it just we've taken several people from this church, several people that aren't from this church up to Northeast Iowa. It's hard to believe you can drive 2 hours from Iowa City and you feel like you're in Colorado when you can catch freshwater trout.
Yeah.
Granted, it's a put and take deal where we supply the fish through the DNR and then they put them in the streams, but we also have natural reproducing brown trout.
Okay.
And it's just beautiful country up there, and the fish are gorgeous, and it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's always fun hearing you talk about your fishing stories too. So
Mhm.
thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Have a good
Yeah.
All right, welcome back. Weren't those some great fish stories we just heard? All right, so as we go through this week, here are our table conversations. How do we show God's love to others? How do we show other people that we are a follower of Jesus? What fish stories do we have in our family? How do we share our joy with others? And how can we be fishers for men in our community? God, thank you so much this week, and thank you all for joining us. We will see you back here next week. Bye-bye.
With the stars in the night sky above.